Okay. Hey guys, it's been a while. I haven't been recording because I have intentionally been taking back steps from a lot of things in my life. Um, there are still just some seasons where you have to spend time just reevaluating some stuff. And I needed to reevaluate what it is I want to do with my life going forward, how I want to structure that, what I want to learn. And moving into a new season of my life, I needed to be intentional. Um, and we're going to do this like we always do this. Claudia's sitting next to the camera. Um, I've been wanting to do a video for a while, but I haven't felt pressed until today. Um, because my time of introspection has made me really look at my role as a person, as it relates to ministry, as it relates to church, and as it relates to other people. So if people follow me on social media, you would have seen I'm kind of having a Solomon season where vanity, everything is vanity. And I understand why Solomon had that season. When your drive and your purpose and your love is for finding out, investigating, uh, you're intentional about learning, growth, and wisdom. At some point, you start to recognize that humans are humans, and the true nature of humans is devastating because not everybody is interested in introspection or growth or healing or self-development or Bible or any of that. Some people are just comfortable being where they are, and I guess I started to get frustrated because of the environment that I'm consistently in, where people are literally just floating through their lives, and I'm watching. For me, it's devastating to watch people essentially throw their lives away, and just float till they die. It's always been a massive issue for me. I mean, the time when I started owning this life a couple of years ago, one of the main objectives was to help people realize that they are bigger than what they think they are, that their lives are bigger than how they treat it. And one of my big motivators was when I was working in a job was I was always seeing people who just worked until they died. That is so sad to me because you never fundamentally find out what you were made for. Um, and I think God has given me, like, internally, I have this mandate for trying to help people discover who they are outside of this idea that they had created for themselves. So I've been feeling a little, the Afrikaans saying is poet eight, dismayed, I guess, by the cultural acceptance of people just being um, involved in activities that suppress who they really are. And even though I would love people to find out who they are in God, my objective is not necessarily only that. I am hoping that people discover who they are intrinsically. This is what I've said for years and years, like it's exactly that sentence. And being in this environment and being by myself for the last 9 months has made it apparent to me that culture has normalized um, just living life at the bare minimum. Which is devastating for me because I know people who are gifted, who God has designed for particular tasks in their lives, but they are so enamored by what culture says they should become and so involved with trending and becoming part of a system or being accepted, that they throw their complete the gifting, or they don't give it the attention that it requires. And honestly, it's something that I have personal feelings towards. So it's kind of put me in a space where I'm just like, people are starting to exhaust me more and more, and I'm finding myself less and less wanting to be around people, in particularly where spaces are created for certain things to happen, but they are not happening. You know what I'm saying? Where you're in rooms, say for instance, we're in a book club and the book club is about learning how to cook beautifully. And all we're learning is what tools to use, but not how to use them, or how to cook and not which tools to use. Like one thing and not the other. We're not being told holistically what is supposed to be done. I'm not in a book club about cooking because that's not. Okay. Claudia knows cooking is not my thing. Okay, I cook because I have to eat, not because I want to. But I'm finding so many spaces where we have become so comfortable with accepting the bare minimum. It's just part of culture now to not have high standards for a particular thing, which is sad. And I think in South African culture, it may be worse than other places because if you take into account university, for instance, South African university degrees is the equivalent of other countries' certificates, which means we have normalized bare minimum. We have normalized doing next to nothing to have a certain achievement, but it limits us, right? Like with studies, if you're getting a degree in South Africa and it's a certificate in other countries, it means your growth is limited to South Africa. Your expansion is limited. And so with your life. So in those spaces, they're supposed to push the narrative. They're supposed to challenge you. They're supposed to take you out of your comfort zone because that's the only way that you expand and grow. So the reason I'm starting on this is I have been very disheartened by people that I have come into contact with that I see potential in, like real potential, like God gifting potential, who would much rather pretend that they don't have the potential and sit in this cultural idea of acceptance because they are longing for acceptance more than they are for self-validation. They'd rather be externally validated for things that are not innately who they are character-wise, because that way they feel accepted or loved, as opposed to stepping outside of that comfort zone and self-validating in the areas of their gifting. Now, I'm not going to generalize this. I have problems in this area as well because there are two particular areas of gifting that I have not been as obedient with as I should be. And I talk openly about that to the people who are close to me. But when I see it so strongly in other people where I'm just like, you do know that you have the ability to change so many people's lives or even change your own life by just taking one step forward. And then they fight me on even taking that step. And I'm not asking to change themselves or pivot in a completely different direction. It's none. I'm worried about you. I'm concerned about you and who you are value-wise, and you don't seem to see yourself. So what I'm trying to do is help you see the version of you that I know you have all of the gifting and ability to be. All you have to do is choose it for yourself because it's your life. And I think this is also what parents feel like when their children take paths that they rather wouldn't have them. But sometimes you have to just step back and let them fall and hope that they get to a place where they see it. Unfortunately, my fire is a little strong, so I get a little bit frustrated. And God's teaching me to not come for people's throats because unfortunately my nature is very what is the word? Yes, I come out like strong. But anyway, so the basis, that was just the foundation. The major conversation I want to have is around the difference between character and behavior. We've been having this conversation for the last couple of days. A lot of things have come up with regards to people who were in my life. I've been thinking a lot about it with myself. Does my behavior reflect my character? When I make behavioral mistakes, am I fundamentally changing it so that it doesn't become part of my character? And also, what is the difference, or not difference, but what is the similarities between what the Bible talks about righteousness and character traits? Because self-righteousness is a bad character trait, but righteousness is a good one. It's come up a lot with regards to also things like consistency and people constantly showing up as they actually are based on behaving in a particular way to look like they have a character trait that they actually do not possess. And this is an interesting sort of topic of conversation for me, because it's a lot of the time it takes a long time for us to recognize people's character. We have to spend enough time around them. Like you, for instance, are really good with picking this up like off the bat. I take a couple of opportunities before I'm like, there's a character flaw here. And because I'm in a Solomon season, I'm finding myself more and more wanting to pull away from those people when I recognize it. And other people are saying to me, you need to step into these spaces. But I don't feel ready to deal with fundamental character flaws because I am dealing with my own, right? For me, because my life has taken so much shifts, I'm having to sit myself back and be like, is this a character trait I want to evolve? Like one of the big ones, me and you were talking about recently, is I've never been someone who necessarily liked gossip. It was not my thing. I always had male friends because they were less likely to gossip than female friends were, even in high school. Um, but I found that in the season of being away from all of the distractions and the trauma and the scarcity and the trying to stabilize my nervous system, that the more stable my nervous system becomes, the more I'm starting to see character traits in myself that I didn't even know were there. They needed to be exposed in a season where there wasn't all this drama around me. And I love how interesting God is in the way that He takes us through certain seasons. Like the wilderness season is the refining season where He refines you and is calling you back to Him, because He says in I think it's in Exodus, Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go so that they can be with me in the wilderness. He specifically said that because God wanted to spend one-on-one time with the Israelites. That's why they went to the wilderness. They did their own thing and delayed the whole process. But I love how God takes us through those wilderness seasons to refine us, but also draw us closer to Him. And I really do believe, regardless of everybody, someone said to me the other day, the experience that I had was really unfair. In my mind, it might have been unfair, but I wouldn't have been in a place where I am right now in my life and my relationship with God if I had not gone through that season, right? Because God needed to validate me away from other people. But this refining season is interesting because now, when you find yourself in that solitude, you can go a couple of directions. Number one, you can start to look at maybe character flaws that you have in your own self, um, or you can be hyper focused on other people's character traits and keep pointing them out, or you find that you have bad habits. So, bad habits like bad financially spending habits, or gossip, or um, just or judgmental behavior, like things that you don't know that you're like unless you have been completely removed from systems that distracted you from refining who you are. And one of the things that came up for us, I think, was gossip. We were starting to slowly pick up a trajectory of doing this more and more. And I was getting convicted, and I think you also pretty much getting convicted about, wait, is this gossip now? Is this now just having a conversation around some things we see, or are we becoming gossipers? And we had to take a step back. And it was interesting to me today when we walked back from church, most of our conversation was quiet because we could say stuff. But I remember sitting in church this morning thinking to myself, I'm not going to allow myself to think anything about anybody that is not something that God would prefer I think. Being consciously aware of that long enough for it to become instilled in my character to not jump there. It's all of these things are habitual, and if you continue to do them, they start to feel what actually happens physically is that your brain starts to make dopamine every time you do that, because now it's starting to feel good to gossip, or it's starting to feel good to become judgmental. We need to be so self-aware, especially in our walk with God, and our walk moving out of hard situations or walking out of a wilderness season, that if we are not keeping ourselves refined, we are going to become part of a culture that harms instead of helps. So I mean, I literally had this conversation with somebody yesterday morning around character and behavior, and they were swirling around it. But in my mind, I was like, if you say who you are, you need to be who you are. Things change, but it should be in a better direction as opposed to a bad direction. Not saying that can't happen, but then it would be a mistake and not a character trait. But sometimes it's difficult to define the difference between whether this is just a behavioral issue with someone and whether it is a character problem. And what I've come to discover, and it's something I wish people would be more aware of, is if someone is consistently making a mistake over and over and over again, it points directly to their character, because they're not willing to fix the mistake in order to not do it again, especially if it's something you feel like has implications on you, right? So if you're addressing something with someone, like someone said to me the other day, no, I do this, this, and this, and this. And then 2 days later, they flipped the script and did exactly the opposite of that stuff for 2 full days. And in my mind, I was like, okay, is this a mistake or is this just part of your character? They tried to convince me that it was a mistake, that it's not something they would do again. I don't have enough information to validate that yet. But what did concern me was that the way that I was trying to be convinced was not convincing. It was like they were trying to make me believe that this is not actually part of who they are, but that they might do it again. That in itself meant they didn't have enough hindsight and introspection and understanding of themselves to be sure whether they'd be doing it again. Like they, how can I say, they are toying with their boundary line. This is why I love how God disciplines us. He teaches us to keep boundary lines in place for ourselves. If we are not doing that, we can step over that line and keep preaching grace and forgiveness. That becomes part of our character. I love like some of the conversations that I listen to in podcasts when they talk about when people fall and when they make a big mistake. By the time they're being caught, this has already been part of their nature for quite some time, which means it's literally solidified itself into their character. So much that they couldn't get a handle over it anymore, and then they just kept preaching forgiveness and grace over it. Usually when you're being caught out with something that makes you fall and makes you look bad and all of that, there's already been a trajectory up here, right? And I'm going to talk from myself. In some instances in my life and stuff that I had to confess about, I didn't feel forced to, but there'd already been a trajectory at the point that it was found out, right? And I came open and clean about it, but at the end of the day, I know in my personal life there'd been a trajectory of things that I kept now being more relaxed about, because I was like, you know what, this is just what it is now. I'm gonna just go all the way in. We need to be very careful about those boundary lines, especially if, now this is particularly if the aim is to develop a good character. Now, the reason I focus on character is because I don't think people realize, sorry, it's going to make noise on the mic. I don't think people realize that your character defines where you end up in your life. It literally is the defining point, the pivoting point for which direction you take. I know for myself, I don't want to be 70 and be wondering what I could have done differently. I don't want to have a deathbed confession situation. I'm going to be honest, clear, open, direct now, and then learn where I need to refine my character, where I need to refine my behavior, how I need to be navigating through conversations, because that is one of the things that I'm learning in this season right now, is how to talk to people from a place of love as opposed to making them feel attacked, which means I have to be more in my feminine to do that, which is God is dealing with me on it. It's very hard. But I don't want to be 70 and be like, I probably blew up all of these things that should have happened in my life because I was refusing to deal with my character. I just was like, this is just the way I am. I used to do that. Look, I used to do that. Like when I was in my teens and my 20s, this is just the way I am. Either you like it or don't. Well, I'm learning the hard way that that's never actually the case. But also I'm learning that some character traits that I do have, like my insistence for honesty and my insistence for like clarity. Ugh, clarity. I hate messy. I hate confusion. Like my insistence to be clear, to like clear cut to a point where you have no minced words from me, even if it seems like I'm coming across as rude, you just know the point, is because I need to be more direct with people in the kind of things that God is trying to get me to do. And although I'm trying to find gentler, more loving ways to describe to people, it's not going to be less direct. It's going to be, I love you and I'm concerned about you and I care about you. But this is the issue. Let's not tiptoe around the issue because I need to do it in a loving way. And you are really good at this. Like Claudia has the skill that I am really praying to God, like download that version of Claudia like 2.0 to me too, because I can be pretty I come across as offensive, I think, to people, in particular men. I come across as offensive because I have a very low tolerance for I'm gonna say it because I had a conversation with someone the other day from the church and I was watching my words. I'm not the kind of person who watches my words in situations like this, but I have a very low tolerance for bullshit. So my thing is like, if I am consistently trying to help you and you just keep pushing back because you are coming in for something or you want this thing to be transactional, then I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I'm just going to call it out. And if you don't want to deal with it, then fine. We don't got to be in each other's company. But I will pray for you because I do love you. I don't have to like you, but I love you. Right? Yeah, God's working on me with that. And I hope I get better at it because I know I want to teach my daughter also to be a lot less masculine, because she's learning to be very masculine right now in her current situation. But the point is, I'm hoping every day that more and more people are interested in actually understanding what their character should look like in order to give themselves a better life. Something that I saw earlier that I think I should talk about here, it's also with regards to this, is sometimes we go through really hard seasons in our lives that completely throw us off and mess up our whole lives and mess up what we think we were going to have and who we were going to be. And then those seasons prolong themselves for two reasons. Number one, in a wilderness season, if the thing is prolonging, either there's an obedience issue there. God is not disciplining you because you're being disobedient. What's happening is you are disobeying God, which is intrinsically just making your season longer. He's sitting there waiting for the gift, and he's just like, so you do know the route you keep taking is walking past the gift every time. I'm giving you direction directly to the gift, but you keep going your own way. That's not helping you. He's not disciplining you. You're just keep taking the wrong path and thinking you're doing the right thing and then excusing it because of grace and forgiveness. Yeah, that's that's a sermon. But there's that. And then there's a point where we become so comfortable with the after season of the trouble, right? We become so uncomfortable sitting in the, okay, I'm out of the immediate danger. All the drama has somewhat ended and it's calmer. So I'm just going to sit here because it's safe. And then just stay there. Now, there could be a numerous amount of reasons for why we decide to stay there and get comfortable. And I don't judge people who end up there, because if you've had a lot of things happen and really unsafe feeling situations happen in your life, this space feels like I can finally breathe, right? The question I have is, at what point does that I finally breathe move to, okay, now I need to get some forward moving momentum. And I'm talking about the slower today because I want people to understand that it's easy to get stuck in the after the difficult season because it feels safe, but you aren't learning anything in that season. If you're not intentionally taking even minuscule steps forward, could be really the dumbest things. You're not going to learn anything there. And you could end up living in that season until you die. I think there's nothing more horrible than coming out of something really traumatic And that just being part of the narrative of your entire life. It's part of your story. It isn't your entire story. You get to create the rest of your story. And the reason I am mentioning that is because I do know that victims of abuse in particular have, remember I spoke about the circles of shame, have circles around them that are connected to the abuser, who shame them through the things that they are going through, because in their minds the victim has some sort of stake in this thing, and for the most part the victim has no idea even how they are in the situation. They have no clue, and these people don't know that they're doing it, but in their minds they're like, just pull yourself together, there's nothing going on here, you just making stuff up. That is harmful and dangerous. What is that? The music. Oh, it's Luke. Okay, anyway. Sorry. We have a Lucas here. Um, anyway, but they make the situation a lot worse for the victim. But there's a point where that victim season ends. Now, when that victim season ends, we have a choice. Ourselves. Right? The words that those people say to us while we're in our victim area are applicable after our victim area. And they should be applicable to us. They shouldn't be applicable where other people are shaming us. It should be us being like, okay, am I choosing to stay the victim here? Or do I have some responsibilities to move my own life ahead? Most people I see don't take on those responsibilities. And like I said earlier, I understand why that happens. But what I'm talking about here is not ridiculous things. Like, now I'm going to become an advocate for abuse, or none of those. You don't even have to be a counselor, like none of that. What I'm saying is, how am I taking the steps in myself, in where I am right now, to make sure at least that I heal? What most people don't reckon with, and this is why the topic of healing for me is always top of mind. Most people don't reckon with the fact that you may have come out of a bad situation, everything is fine, you're maybe doing not self-development work, say maybe you're doing work, you got a job and the job is exciting and it's making you see how brilliant you are at a certain thing. If you're not doing the healing stuff, like the step-by-step way of dealing with how you got in the situation in the first place, how the situation impacted you, what are the remnants of it that you're still dealing with today, what are the character traits you might have developed in that stage that now need to be changed, refined, growth, and what behaviors will that need to change to make sure you don't walk yourself back into that situation. If we're not doing all of those things, you do know that in the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you move, and with the people you interact with, you are basically reflecting the old version of yourself all of the time. And this is the most dangerous for parents. Parents who don't heal, I've seen this 1,000 times. Parents who don't heal from whatever they've been through, right? Who think they're fine. Every single instance, they pass down the issues that they haven't healed from, their insecurities, their pain, self-image issues, all of that. They pass it through to their children through the nature of how they raise them. Every single parent. I've not, to this day, I've never seen a parent who hasn't done the full healing, who hasn't passed that trait down to their child. Because the child shows me. In my mind, young children will come in and say weird things, and I'm just like, you didn't learn that by yourself. Then I'll have a conversation with the parent, and I'm like, there's it. Because they don't know that they are displaying this information all of the time. We are showing people information about us constantly, in the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we move, the way we, if we are agreeable, if we are disagreeable, if we are anxious. What I find really interesting is there are parents, and I had this experience this week, that are super anxious about their parenting. So when you spend enough time around them, you can feel the energy of their anxiety about their parenting. Because that parent doesn't know that there's something about their anxiety around this thing they haven't dealt with, which they will pass on to the child. All of these things are so important. Becoming a better version of you is for you. And I was saying earlier this morning, because I had a bit of an interaction with someone who doesn't seem to see the value in looking at themselves in the mirror, who doesn't seem to see the value in finding a path that is going to push them forward. They're just comfortable. And the term I used to use, which I think is so relevant, is like we find ourselves in our smelly own poop, in our own shit, and we just want to sit there because it's warm and it's cuddly. So we just sit and we close our noses and pretend it doesn't stink. That's what we do now. And you know what the nicest part about it is? Culture tells us it's okay. And one of the ways that they're doing that is by telling us, if you aren't excellent, you're regular. So stay regular, because being excellent is too hard to achieve, when excellence is by someone else's standard and not your own. Yeah, so that all of that I think ties into who we are, within our character, who we are meant to become will be defined by that. People who I see who haven't lived out their purpose, and I know a couple of people who haven't. I mean, we've had conversations years ago about what you think the next steps need to be out of your hardest season. And they dismissed it altogether. And now I sit years later watching them just float in that messy situation, because even if they don't tell people they are a victim, because they are so strong, they're not showing their victimhood, they still live as a victim. They're survivors. I can never see myself as a survivor. Never. I did survive, but I'm not labeling myself a survivor. That would completely defeat the purpose of what I am meant to do next. This season of survival was a refining season. It wasn't a season for me to continue to tote the badge of I survived. And I'm starting to teach myself to discuss less of the story and speak more of the lesson of what God was trying to do in and through me. Right? We need to really want to be mature enough, and I use the word want on purpose. Want to be mature enough to start really looking at the detailed nuances of these things, of how we live our lives, why we are living it the way that we do, how we are raising the people that we are raising in this world. If anything that we are doing that is part of our character is having a very negative impact on the people that surround us at all times. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's why, like, one of the things that has frustrated me lately, it's happened now, I think 2 or 3 times in the last week that I spoke to you about yesterday, is people pitying my story. So there are people who have followed, and I'm going to say this here, because I want the people who watch this to realize, I tell my story, and I tell my story because I'm trying to get to the lesson. Most of the people, no, it's fine. Most of the people don't let me get to the lesson, because now they are heartsore about the story. But the immediate pivot point is pity. And then I can see the pity on their faces. And then I'm just like, pity feels yucky to me. It's like gross, like I want to puke. Like, don't feel pity for me. I don't feel sorry for myself. I might have at some point, and I deserved to, because all my life I never felt like I was allowed to. I was actually very particularly told as a child, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And that's why I became as masculine as I did, because then I needed to be my protector, right? No one was going to do that for me. But I don't feel sorry for my experience. I don't feel sorry for being alone in a city that I don't know, without my family and without all the necessities that I needed or I thought I needed. I don't feel sorry for myself. My question to God is, why are you taking me through this? Not, oh my gosh, this shouldn't be happening to me. You know, this is so bad. I wish it could end. Like, I'm like, yes, I wish the season could end. But not to the point of everyone feels sorry for me because I need your, you know, nah. There were times when I was desperate, and desperation will make you do some wild things, and say some wild things. But when someone gives me a face up, like someone would say to me last week, "Oh my word, are you okay?" And the second they said that, I was like, "Why are you pitying me? Do you not see who is standing in front of you right now?" And I find that whole season and my entire story has made people blind to the version of who they see standing in front of them now. I am not the person who went through that. I am a completely different person. I'm actually who I was meant to be. That brought me here. And me being here is the most safe, most emotionally stable, most calm nervous system. I mean, you can tell just in the way that I'm talking. Usually I'm hyper and hyped, and today I don't feel that energy. The more connected to God I've ever been in ways that worship music takes me out regularly, which is problematic when I got stuff to do. Um, but the most peace. And things don't have to be perfect or even good for me to have peace, you know? Uh, they just needed to be filled with God. So the point is, we need to really look at are we developing our character, and if character is even important to us. How we find that out. That information is everywhere. I do recommend watching podcasts. If you want to ask what those are, you can send me a message. I will tell you which ones are the really good ones to go to. But also understand that people who've gone through hard seasons and who come out on the other side are going through seasons of character defining. Recognize who they are, where they are, and what they need in that season if that's what you're coming for. Pitying them gives you permission to label them as their story and not as who they are becoming. What's more important to me now is who God is refining me to become. My story is part of my narrative, but it's not my whole life. Your story is part of your narrative, and it's not your whole life. And it's made you into who you are. And something that you said also last night was, you are proud of how you were raised in the things, because you wouldn't be who you are. I mean, you were one of the most empathetic people I've known in my life. No, really. And really thoughtful, extremely thoughtful. If all the things that happened in your life and happen in your life didn't happen, you wouldn't be who you are, right? So we don't like hate the people or hate the situations. Yes, it's unfair, it's painful. Some of them just feel unnecessary. But honestly, a lot of my story, especially some of the stuff that I'm going through, like looking through with a different lens, is like, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't have seen this about myself. I wouldn't seen this about God. There's so much about God that I'm only able to see because of what I went through. There's no way I would have seen God the way that I needed to see Him if none of this stuff happened. And that was the point, isn't it? That is the whole point. That's the whole point of why Job went through what he went through. That's the whole point Solomon went through a Solomon season and had to repent. Because that Solomon season actually revealed to him the true nature of who God was. God said to Job, "Were you there when I created the earth? How dare you?" And he was like, "Oh, wait, actually, I think I know more than I really do." And he repented. We cannot see God unless we have wilderness and Solomon seasons. We cannot see Him, because that is when self-righteousness takes place, and we believe we know more than we actually do. We know nothing. Even those of us who were the wealthiest, intelligent scholars in the planet, we don't have the information nowhere near of what it is we can. But what we do know, we should be using, and we aren't. So that was my point. I didn't drink my coffee finish. Having a really chilled, calm day. Um, But yeah, I don't, like I said in one of the first videos, I don't know how often I'm doing these YouTube videos. I just felt like today I needed to talk about this, because my Solomon season has actually really made me very particular about the people I'm willing to be around. There are some people I just have zero tolerance for, and I'm asking God to work on my heart with it, because I don't know why I am feeling so frustrated by humans. Like human. And some humaning is shitty humaning. Yeah. I just wish people were like themselves, man. You know, I feel like I'd want to spend more time around people if pretending wasn't culturally accepted.
If you were just authentic to themselves.
You know? Or at least trying to discover it. Like, don't have a conversation. Like, I saw something on Instagram yesterday, so he said, I don't do small talk. And her post said it gives me anxiety. It doesn't give me anxiety. I don't do small talk because it wastes my time. I don't want to talk about the weather. What is talking about the weather? What am I adding to my life talking about the weather? Like, small talk is just, it's not the gig, y'all. And we're moving into a season in the world where pretense is gonna blow up. This new generation is going to slap these older generations and my generation off the map if we do not come to the party. I'm serious, because they do not have time for narcissistic behavior, for fake behavior, for pretending to be one way. I want to end it up with this. This is something I said twice in the last 2 days, and it's something that I've been saying to people for years, and when I do, their reaction usually tells me who they are. The question you need to all be asking, and the question I ask myself regularly: who am I really? Am I really who I say I am? Am I becoming who I am meant to be? Or do I even care? When you ask someone a question like that and they get angry, it tells you a lot about them. It tells you a whole lot about them, and those are usually the people I avoid with like the plague. Because the second you ask someone that question and they feel attacked, there's a level of pretense happening that they do not want other people to see. In every situation, every relationship, I don't care who it is, you ask those questions. Because if you are planning to do the things I'm talking about in this video, it's going to matter who's around you. It's really going to matter. They can either pull you completely off of the path, or they can help God, or not help, they could be a tool God uses to help refine your character. That's all. Just be who you actually were meant to be. And stop making things so complicated, y'all. We don't need drama. I'm starting to realize also, sorry, I'm gonna finish now, but starting to realize people who are drawn to drama and creating drama are the ones who least know who they are. Don't do it. Just don't. Like, you don't need to have a pussy party about everything and anything any other person does. It's just so much energy. See, this is the Solomon season. It's like, so much energy. Why you gotta throw a tantrum? We just put the chair on the side of the... Like, calm down. Take a deep breath. Woosah. Humans are unnecessarily complicated and they overcomplicate things. Life is not that difficult and not that hard to come through. Those who create drama and chaos and your people, because they're gonna make drama in your life. And from someone who hasn't had drama in a good 9 months of my whole life, these 9 months have been the best drama-free months of my life, homeless or not. So, have a good one. Love you all. Bye.